Every few weeks, a lab tells me it has built the best coding model in the world, and every few weeks I have to remind myself how much quiet work the word best is doing in that sentence. This week, it was xAI's turn. Grok 4.5 shipped on July 8th, the first model xAI has built specifically for coding and agentic work. The claims are loud. It matches or beats Anthropic's Opus 4.8 on a serious terminal benchmark. It runs at 80 tokens per second, and it does the same work using about half the tokens of the leading models. And it was trained on trillions of tokens of cursor data. That last detail is the one everyone skated past, and it is the one that changes how you should read every other number in this launch. Start with what actually shipped, because the facts matter more than the framing. Grok 4.5 is a mixture of experts model, trained jointly with xAI. It is available now inside Cursor on every plan, in xAI's own Grok build, and through the xAI console. On Terminal Bench 2.1, a test of how well a model can drive a shell, run commands, and finish real engineering tasks, Grok scores 83.3%. Opus 4.8 lands at 78.9. GPT 5.5, tuned high, hits 83.4. And Fable, at max settings, tops the board at 84.3. So Grok is genuinely top tier. It clears Opus by more than 4 points and sits within a single point of the two best models on the chart. On this benchmark, that is real, not marketing noise. But here is where the skeptic in me wakes up. Look at that leaderboard again. The three frontier coding models, Grok, GPT 5.5, and Fable, are separated by one single percentage point. When multiple labs converge inside a 1-point band on the same test, that is not a story about one model being smarter. It is a story about a benchmark getting saturated. Terminal bench is becoming the thing everyone optimizes for, and the moment a benchmark becomes a target, it stops being a good measurement. That is not a Grok problem, it is an industry problem. But it means the Beats Opus headline is thinner than it sounds, because against the models people actually cross-shop, Grok is tied, not ahead. Now the cursor data, the genuinely interesting part. xAI says Grok was trained on trillions of tokens of real interactions between developers, their code bases, and coding agents. The pitch is that this teaches the model not just what good code looks like, but how developers actually behave. How they navigate a repo, recover from a failed command, and work through a real debugging session. Honestly, that is a smart idea. Static code from GitHub shows you the destination. Interaction data shows you the route. It is the difference between reading a finished essay and watching someone write it, and the second teaches you far more about the process. If you want a model that is good at the messy, iterative loop of real software work, learning from millions of real sessions is a legitimate edge. But think about what that means for the benchmarks. Grok was trained on how people use Cursor, it is deployed inside Cursor, and it is evaluated on agentic tasks that look a lot like Cursor workflows. That is a very tight loop. The model has been shaped by the exact environment it is sold into and measured in. That does not make it useless. If you live in Cursor, a model tuned to Cursor's patterns might genuinely feel better. But it raises a hard question. Is Grok 4.5 better at coding, or is it better at looking like a good coder inside one specific harness? Those are not the same claim, and the announcement quietly lets you assume the first when the evidence only supports the second. There is also a provenance question nobody at the launch wanted to answer. Whose data is this exactly? Cursor's usage reflects the work of enormous numbers of developers, much of it touching private code. When that becomes the training corpus for a frontier model, you are entitled to ask who consented to what and what leaked into the weights. This relationship is disclosed, so I am not crying foul. But we trained on trillions of tokens of how you use your editor is a sentence that deserves more scrutiny than it got. Let me be fair, because there is one claim here I think is both real and important, and it is not the benchmark. It is the efficiency. xAI says Grok delivers roughly twice the token efficiency of the leading models on the same task at 80 tokens per second. If that holds in production, and token efficiency is much harder to game than a benchmark because you feel it directly in your bill, then that is the number that actually matters. Most teams are not bottlenecked by whether they score 83 or 84 on a leaderboard. They are bottlenecked by cost and latency at scale. Speed compounds too. At 80 tokens per second, an agent that has to make dozens of tool calls to finish a task feels responsive instead of sluggish. And responsiveness is what keeps a human willing to actually use the thing. A model that does the same work for half the tokens, served cheaply, is genuinely useful regardless of any chart. That is the part of this launch I would build around. And put a real number on it. Twice the token efficiency is not an abstract stat. If your team is spending, say, $4,000 a month running agents that read files, run tests, and iterate, then having the tokens for the same output is $2,000 back every month per workflow at scale. That is the kind of margin that decides which model a company actually standardizes on. It is also worth noticing the pattern here. Training a coding model on the telemetry of a popular coding tool is going to become normal because interaction data is the one moat that public GitHub code cannot give you. Grok is just the first to say it out loud. Expect every serious lab to chase the same kind of data next. So who should care? If you are an individual developer already living in Cursor, Grok 4.5 is worth trying today. It was tuned for exactly your workflow, and the pricing is aggressive. If you are running agentic coding at scale and watching your token spend climb, the efficiency claim is worth benchmarking against your own real tasks, not xAI's. And if you are a team lead making a platform decision, be slower. Do not switch your stack on a one-point benchmark lead in a training story that conveniently overlaps with the eval. Run it on your code base, on your tasks, and measure cost, not just correctness. Here is my verdict. Grok 4.5 is a real competitive frontier coding model, and that part is not hype. It is genuinely top tier on Terminal Bench, and the efficiency story, if it survives production, is the most compelling thing about it. But the framing is doing more work than the facts. Beats Opus is true and misleading at once, because it is tied with the models that matter, and the benchmark itself is saturating. And the trained-on Cursor data edge cuts both ways. It is a clever way to learn real developer behavior, and a very good way to build a model that shines brightest in the one place you happen to be tested. My take, try it for the cost and the speed, not for the leaderboard. The efficiency is the real innovation. The benchmark win is mostly a story about how little the benchmark can still tell us. Judge it on your own code and let your token bill be the tiebreaker. If this is the kind of engineering first read on AI news you want, the version that checks the claims instead of repeating them, subscribe, because I do this every day. And tell me in the comments, have you run Grok 4.5 on your own repo yet? And did the efficiency claim hold up? I read them, and I will feature the sharpest tests next time.